Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be painting these little cyclamen, and I'm going to be using the Winsor and Newton Artisan oil paints. So these are the water soluble oil paints, which means that you can clean your brushes off much more easily. But don't forget, they're still an oil based paint and we still use them as we would a traditional oil. So I use them using linseed oil, but you could use them with different media. And Artisan do a range of media as well, and some faster drying mediums, and you can buy all sorts in the range, and special varnishes as well for Artisan oil paints. So to begin with, I'm getting a few colours out. I think we end up with about 5 colours altogether. I haven't used this green before, which is an olive green. It's a really lovely rich dark green, and I haven't used the purple before. These were 2 new colours that I bought just recently, so I thought I would have a go with both of those. I add some blue to that green because on the cyclamen leaf it's quite a blue green, and I also use the blue to add to the pink because it's quite a mauvey blue pink that we've got in the cyclamen flowers themselves. So the idea today really was to keep it as simple and abstract as I could. I didn't know where I was going with this painting when I set off. I didn't have a plan, I just set off painting. So I began by drawing the leaves, and really, if I did, in hindsight, if I did it again, I would do it the other way around. I would put the flower shapes in first. I sort of lost my way a little bit with the bottom group of flowers. It's difficult to tell where one flower stops and another begins, but that's the way they are anyway. They're sort of all compacted together, the flowers in a little heap there in the centre of the plant. So really I just wanted to get a feel for the general shapes of both the leaves and the flower petals so that we could tell immediately that it was a cyclamen that we were looking at and not any other plant. So really just reducing it down to very basic shapes and tones and not putting any detailing, keeping it sort of impressionistic and semi-abstract. So began with the leaves and then carried on to the flowers, so just building up the colours and the tones all the time, but not doing that detail. So one thing that's very characteristic about the cyclamen is they're quite flat across the bottom of the flower where the petals come off either side, and also they've got very tall slender petals with lots of nice curls in. So I was much happier with the 2 petals at the 2 flowers at the top of the plant than I was with the ones in the centre of the plant, which got a little bit muddled together. So the colours themselves, like I said, were just those few ones. I'll just go through those again for you. Raw sienna, olive green, permanent alizarin crimson, French ultramarine, titanium white, dioxazine purple, and that was it, wasn't it? So yeah, so I mixed you'll see towards the end of the the painting that I use quite a bit of white, but I never use the white really on its own. I always have those other colours in with it. So I use it for highlights, but it does still we still haven't really got white just on its own until the very last end highlights. The darkest colours are made up of that olive with the ultramarine mixed up together. So you'll see that the top 2 flowers are pretty much a focal point for the painting at the end, and the background, when I put that raw sienna on as the background, I leave it very yellow and bright to that side where those 2 flowers are, and then I blend in the other side of the painting just so that we keep the focus on those 2 flowers there with the more yellow and brighter tones just where they are, but keeping it again very, very simple. So you'll see I alternate between 2 brushes. The one that I'm using for applying the paint is a Daler Rowney round number 2 graduate brush, and it's a new one. I haven't used it before, but I wanted to do a whole painting just using the same brush, and that way you remain a little bit loose, so your work isn't as tight. You haven't got the opportunity to go into that detail even if you wanted to, because you've got quite a large brush. And then I used another brush for blending. I may have over blended. I do tend to with oil painting. I'm not that experienced with oil paints. I don't use them an awful lot myself. Occasionally for commissions and things I use them, but I do feel sometimes I do over blend, and then I end up with not in as many sharp lines as I should have, because really what we want in a painting is to have some nice soft edges and some harder edges to get that contrast in. So maybe I overblend, but the brush I use for the blending, I'm just going to have a look here. It's an Artist Hog, and it's again, that's a Winsor and Newton one, and it's a size 2 short flat, and then at the end I use a slightly larger one right at the very end to just again blend some of those colours together, and they're just drying a little bit more at the end when I blend them. So be careful when you're doing your blending. that, you know, if your paint's very wet, you're going to be blending more than you want to, and again, if it's dry, you might need to apply more pressure. So that's all going to depend on how quickly your paint's drying. But by adding the linseed oil, it shouldn't dry too quickly. You should be able to move the paint round and keep working on it for a long time. And the wonderful thing about oil paints is that we can come back and rework this tomorrow, next week, next year, whenever. You can always rework your oil paintings if you're not happy with them at a later date. Like I said, I'm not overly happy with the flowers in the centre. They're all in a little bit of a clump and a muddle, but that's maybe characteristic of the plant. Sort of got lost with where I was going. So maybe we could do a drawing to begin with if we really wanted to get much more structure in those flowers. But I was just aiming for the feel of the plant, and I'm hoping that it just looks like, you know, a cyclamen, which of course at this time of year we're seeing in the shops. And I've actually got some of those ones that grow out in the garden as well, and they're looking beautiful at the moment. So it's you know, a lovely little plant to have a go at. You could also have a go at it in watercolour or any other media, but just get the curls of those petals and the way that they're all folding around each other, and the folds in those leaves as well. Now, some of the detail you could go into would be to put those veins in the leaves, because they're quite characteristic and much paler than the rest of the leaf. So I'm trying to think if there's much else I need to tell you about what I'm doing here. My voice might not sync with what's going on the screen, because I do find this editing software quite tricky for that, getting it to work. So I just tend to do a voiceover and hope for the best. So yeah, so these brushes, I've got the brushes next to me here as I'm talking, and one thing to say about it is you might have seen the little video I did on how I wash my brushes when I've been using the water soluble oil paints. And the way I do that is I rinse them off under the tap to get most of the paint out of them, and then I put them in about an inch of baby oil, so just the ordinary baby oil that you buy from the supermarket. And I put them in that and leave them overnight, and you'll see that the next day there's quite a bit of colour in that baby oil where they've continued to clean. So give them a good mix around in that, and then again rinse them off under the tap, and that really works well, and you get nice smelling brushes. And if you reshape them after you've rinsed them, they've still got that little touch of baby oil on, and it's easy to reshape your brushes, and it keeps your brushes in good order. I have to say I'm not the best at looking after my brushes. It's you know, one of those things that I'm not very disciplined at keeping things tidy. So yeah, I enjoyed doing this little study of the cyclamen, and one thing I should have said is I angled it quite a bit. I didn't do it just looking at it straight on. I looked at it more from the top, so I got the shapes of the leaves more. So with any flower drawing that you're doing, move the angle that you're looking at it. Maybe do a rose from the top, looking into it, or whichever flower you're picking, do it from an angle that you wouldn't normally do. Maybe do it from the back. I know I did a rose from the back a few weeks ago in watercolour on YouTube that you may have seen, and it just gives you a different perspective and makes a more interesting picture sometimes, because there's some lovely shapes at the back of flowers and the back of leaves as well. So turn things around in your hand and see which way you think it looks pleasing to you to make a nice little composition. So I think that's everything. I usually say that and then think of something else. So if you have a go at this, you don't have to have a go at a cyclamen. You could have a go at another flower and just pick out the very basic shapes, and then after that just keep working on adding the tone and the colour, looking at where it's darkest and lightest. I feel that maybe I needed more tone to get a bit more shape into these leaves and a bit more depth in the painting. But again, it was just a quick little sketch that I wanted to have a go at. And I've actually times it by about 5, speeded it up by about 5, so that gives you an idea of how long it actually took me to paint this afternoon. So I hope you found that useful. If there are any other subjects that you'd like me to do in water mixable oil, if you want to put that in the comments below, I'll try and do that as soon as possible. And also, if you enjoyed this and you have a go yourself at either a cyclamen or some different flowers, trying to keep it impressionistic and abstract, let me know how you're getting on in the comments below, or if you've got any questions regarding that, and I'll be happy to get back to you as soon as I can. So for the meantime, if you like, enjoy the rest of the video, and I'll be back again soon with more mixed media tutorials in all sorts of subjects. But if there's anything specific that you would like, as always, just pop that in the comments below. So thank you very much for watching, and bye for now.